For the first 20 or 30 years of my life, if I thought about what story the Bible was telling, I would think it was telling a story that went something like this. We humans messed up, we sinned, and so God was very cross with us, so a solution had to be found. God tried to make a solution to the human problem by calling Israel and giving them the law, and that really didn't seem to work, so he sent Jesus instead, and Jesus, by dying and rising again, opened up the possibility of a totally different life, a life which consisted in leaving this world and going to heaven. I suspect that that narrative is very familiar, very common among many Christians in churches, in young people's groups to this day. And when I was studying the Bible as a teenager, I think I was learning verses and passages and finding my way around the Bible, but the verses and passages I was looking at fitted within that scheme rather than within the scheme that the Bible itself offers. Little by little, over the years, I have come to see that the whole Bible tells a story which is really very, very different from that one. I don't think that story is utterly misleading. I'd much rather people knew that following Jesus was the way to life rather than that they didn't know that following Jesus was the way to life. But the big biblical story, I believe, goes something like this. God made a beautiful, wonderful world which was a creation of heaven and earth designed for one another. That's what Genesis 1 and 2 are all about. God making a world that is going to be his own place. He wants to come and live there with his human creatures. But when the human creatures rebel and revolt against God's purpose for them, instead of this creation developing as God wanted it to do, it went horribly wrong. And when we jump from Genesis 1 and 2 to the very end of the Bible, to Revelation 21 and 22, we find a new heaven and a new earth, and they are joined together. Indeed, the image which Revelation 21 uses is that of marriage. The New Jerusalem comes down from heaven, adorned like a bride for her husband. And the strapline for that is not the dwelling of humans is now with God, but the dwelling of God is now with humans. So the big biblical story is about God making a world, a heaven and earth reality, a bipartite but united reality, about that going horribly wrong, and then God's long purpose and plan to put it right, ending with the promise that God himself would come and be with his people and put the whole world right at last and bring heaven and earth together into one. That is the big biblical story. Of course, there are many other things that are going on in the Bible, and people sometimes say to me, well, Tom, the book of Proverbs doesn't seem to fit into that story. The answer is, well, actually it does, because the book of Proverbs is about wisdom, about what it means to be human. And as we'll see in one of the later segments, there is at the heart of God's creational purpose a sense of what it means to be human, so that Proverbs fits into that larger narrative. Or the Song of Songs fits in because it's a celebration of the love between a man and a woman, which is how God's first commandment to be fruitful and multiply is carried forward. So as we look at the whole Bible, it's a big sprawling story. It isn't one simple line narrative. There's all sorts of subsets and sub-stories, but that's where it's all going. And if we remember that, then all the other bits and pieces will actually fall into place.